This will be a fun video for you guys to watch. So I'm going to go over the Durant, how we got it running. This is a barn find car. The engine was locked up. It was extremely locked up, probably one of the worst locked motors that I've worked on in a long time. My dad and I had fun tinkering on this. We made it just a fun project, and I'm going to show you the first time it started and a long time it was sitting. So let's go through that video. So the first thing I'm going to do with this motor is I've got Marvel Mystery Oil in all the cylinders because the motor is locked up. I pulled the spark plugs out. You can see the amount of corrosion inside there where the electrode is. Next step will be letting that soak and seeing if it will free up and roll over, and then getting ignition, putting some fuel in it. Hopefully it's got compression, and we'll fire this motor up. It's been a long time. It's been asleep for a little while, so it'll be fun to hear it run again. On this old 1929 Durant, this flathead soaked the cylinders with Marvel Mystery Oil. You can still see it's in there. Unfortunately, even after days of soaking it, couldn't get it to roll over. Didn't want to do any damage to the motor, and pulled the cylinder head off to take a closer look. And you can see this is in rough shape. They just put it together with a bunch of silicone. These valves are so corroded that, you know, when we break it free, I don't know if half that valve seat's going to come with that valve or not. But what we're going to do, we took the intake and exhaust off. We have the side cover off, and we're going to try to lift these valve stems gently while tapping on it and applying some heat to try to free them up, and hopefully the valve seats are going to be okay. And then with the cylinders, I'm just going to run a hone in here, and I'm going to hone these cylinders because they're pretty rusty. You can see that. So I'm going to hone the cylinders, and then Dad just has that little jig. We're going to tap on these pistons and try to free the rings up. And if we can get the motor rolling over, we'll put a new head gasket on it, clean everything up, and hopefully have some compression and maybe be able to fire it up without having to rebuild the whole thing. Because, you know, with these old things, it's sometimes you just want to drive them. You don't need them to be perfectly restored. If the motor has compression, all it needs is fuel spark. So I'm going to go ahead and just tinker with it before we just go ahead and pull it all apart. You can see the mice got right up into the exhaust, so that did a lot of damage as well. But hopefully the bottom end's fine. We can fix this top end and get it working again. Keep you posted. So the valves were completely rusted in the engine here, and you can see that valve stem had swelled up. And this is the exhaust port, and all the mice had been in there and everything. So we tried actually getting on here where you'd lap the valve and tapping it and twisting it, and all of the intake valves were fine, but all the exhaust valves wouldn't budge. So then my dad suggested I put a C-clamp on there and do this, and it actually worked out really well. That force was just enough to pop it up and then work it back and forth, and after a while they start to move. So I know that this is pretty hillbilly ingenuity, but sometimes that's all you need to do. I don't want to rebuild the engine, so it'd just be nice if this work gets freed up, gets compression. These valves seen better days, but I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to lap them after this, and hopefully they'll seal up. So sweet. Got some of the valves already freed up, and then we've got the pistons freed up, which was a real battle after honing the cylinders. Some of them look good, some of them not so good. Yeah, go ahead, crank it up. What we're doing with this engine. Like I said, we want to get it running to do some pre-diagnostic checks or diagnostic checks on it, because as I said, the freeze plugs are blown out, don't know if there's a hole in the block, don't know much about the engine, and basically the valves are really hard to find. I would have bought new valves, put them in, but they're not something you could just throw in your shopping cart online and then check out. I found maybe 2 guys in the country that have these particular valves, otherwise I got to make them. It's kind of a pain in the ass. So what I've done, just try to clean them up. Otherwise, I got to write like 6 love letters, because these are like older guys too. Be like, hey dude, can I get these valves? Can I get these valves? And mail them a check. So it's going to be a while. But I will get all the stuff to do a proper engine rebuild on this engine eventually. Just gather it over time. But what I've done is ended up popping the valves off, cleaning these up. You can see that the valve stem is corroded away by the mice getting into the exhaust and intake ports and actually crapping all over the, it's not, you can see the majority of the rust is where it goes through the valve guide. Basically, I'm not gonna get too technical here. We've cleaned up the valve seat with a little bit of lapping compound, and I just made a little fixture with a drill so we could spin them, and so they're actually seating quite well. Unfortunately, the top part of it is what cools the valve. It's called the valve margin. There's not much left. It's pretty much corroded away, but as long as the seat's there, we'll have the functionality that we need to get compression in the engine, and as long as the rings are all right, we should be able to fire this thing up probably by the end of the day. So I'm gonna keep working on it. I'll keep you posted. Drank a bunch of beer last night and ended up making a few things to get the valves out. This is just a wrench welded to the clamp, so that's how you compress the valve spring. And I was probably 10 beers deep when I made this thing. It's terrible, but it actually works. So just basically, instead of hand lapping the valve, these needed a lot of lapping. So this is going to prep that surface to help the valve seat. It looks terrible, but it works. And you know what? For a one-time deal like this, sometimes that's all you need. You can see that after lapping it and cleaning it up, you can see how that's a polished finish, and now these are mated together, and before these were both quite rusty and pitted. This gives me a little bit of hope that these are actually gonna seat. So that's it, put her back together. All right, we're starting to put the car back together, but as all projects go, you keep finding little things that are gonna be a problem down the line, especially if you do get the engine running. So inside the water jackets, there's like tons of corrosion in here, so we pulled the rest of the freeze plugs out and are going to blow that back and forth, and we actually got a bunch of it already out. There's still more in there. So what I can do is I can get the cylinder head back on and then hook the garden hose up and start washing it back and forth and just give this thing a really good flush so that doesn't become a recurring problem, clogging up the water pump, getting in the radiator. If by chance we do get this thing running, you don't want to cause further issues down the line. And since, you know, we went a little more invasive with this, I don't know what you call it, just getting this thing freed up and getting it running, I decided it would probably be a good idea to paint some of this stuff, so now more stuff's coming off just to kind of clean it up. And I know people will be like, dude, you're crazy, this thing, you don't even know if it runs. I'm gonna tell you right now, it's gonna probably run, and it'll probably be a while till I can gather up the parts and get it, you know, cleaned up the rest of the way, do a rebuild on it if it needs it. I think that, I think it'd be nice to have this thing painted up, and I enjoy doing that stuff. So that's what we're gonna do. And also I got the oil pan off, and I already cleaned that up. When we took it off, we dumped it out, and there was just tons of sludge in here. So what you want is you don't want your sump sucking up all that sludge and then clogging up your main bearings or rod bearings, because this is actually a pressurized oil system, which is kind of unique for a car of this era. Actually, if you look under here, it's pretty cool. You can kind of tell. All right, this is down under the oil pan here, and it's actually kind of cool. So this is your sump. This is actually the oil pickup tube right here. It's got just a little felt piece that seals it, and I got new stuff for all that. But there's so much sludge that it's probably sucking sludge up, and you can see there's the pump. So I'm gonna pull the pump off, backblow all these lines. You can see that this copper line goes to the main bearing. It's actually pretty cool how this is like, this little manifold is made up. I'm not even focused right, but yeah, you get the idea there, and it's cool. So we're gonna clean it, and we're gonna make sure that if we do get this fired up, that we have perfect oil delivery, and we're not gonna have any issues with clogs, pressure, or, you know, damage internally to the engine. So we're gonna do that too. So I guess it looks like we're doing all kinds of stuff when I wasn't really planning on that, but that's how this goes. Keep going until it's pretty good. It needs the exhaust on it, some tuning, but yeah, it's not bad. That's not bad. That means it's getting oil Alright, nice update on the car. I'm here with Tim English at the Lake Orion Muffler Man. And oddly enough, I used to work here when I was 16 years old, so I've known Timmy a long time. And I always told him when I worked here, he does awesome custom exhaust jobs on classic cars and all kinds of cars, but he's a great tube bender and knows what he's doing. So I always bring my classics to him, and he told me when I was 16, when I asked him, I said, when I get older, if I get classic cars, will you do my exhaust? And that's exactly what it is. And I told him he needs to autograph each one, so he autographs them with a weld. But I want to introduce you to Timmy. He does great work. He did an awesome job on this. So next video, we'll take it for a ride. It's actually running right now. It's so quiet you can't hear it running. Turn on that exhaust system. There, my exhaust system looks sweet. There's my autograph by Tim. It's nicely bent going over the axle back here. Let's see. Oh yeah, that looks great. So next up on the car, do a little drive, and eventually I'll paint this car. I'll redo the interior. I've got an old Singer sewing machine. I'll show you guys we're gonna stitch up the mohair interior. But right now, I just want to get the car running and put away into storage, and then do restoration stuff to it later. Just got the car back from the muffler shop, drove it around a bit, got the brakes lubed up, freed up. They're going to need a little bit more work. The car's going to need some more tuning. But let's go over what we've done and where the car's at currently. So, got the hood back on there. And you can see we got the motor cleaned up nicely. What I am going to do, well, last time you saw the motor run, you could probably see exhaust coming out the thermostat housing here, and that's because I didn't have the head gasket down to full torque spec on here, because I didn't know if I was going to have to pull it back off to deal with the valves anymore. I torqued it down to 55 foot-pounds. I think that's the final torque. It was hard to find the torque values online, but it's not leaking out of there anymore. It's not leaking anywhere else. And the motor, I'm pretty happy with the way that it sounds and runs. It has oil pressure. So I just wanted to kind of show you guys that. Go ahead and fire this thing up. Let's see if it'll start. Sounds really nice. It's a little different. You have to retard the spark timing, which changes the distributor. And then when you have that ready, I got the battery cable a little loose just in case I need to pull it off in an emergency. There she is running. You know, some cars you want to sound real loud when they're running, and other cars you don't. This is a particular car you wanted to just run quiet the way it was, because when you're driving down the road, you just want to hear the air ripping over the fenders on an old car like this. Let's see here. Doesn't sound too bad. We've got it running a little bit better. There's some hesitation here, but the fact that it's running and driving now is just amazing. Let's go ahead. I'm going to drive this thing off and conclude the video, I guess. So let me strap this down. It's Halloween. I've got my 1920s my gear on. I've got my knickers on. I'm going to go ahead and get these 40 gallons of moonshine across the county line before, the cops can figure out what I'm doing in my 1929 Durant. Thanks for watching, guys. Thanks for watching, guys.